The moment the sun finally slid out of the way, the James Webb Space Telescope locked onto something no one was prepared for. It wasn't just back. It wasn't just brighter. It was transformed. 3I Atlas, humanity's third, confirmed interstellar visitor had returned from behind the solar glare, burning with a brilliance that had no right to exist. Its reflectivity had surged more than 400%, turning the object into a blinding shard of light that almost overwhelmed Webb's detectors. It looked less like a comet and more like a living lens, as if the surface itself had reorganized into something that wanted the sun's light instead of fearing it. Across the first images, the glow rippled, not flickered, not scattered, but rippled in smooth, coordinated waves. These weren't chaotic bursts of dust or jets of gas erupting from a melting surface. These were movements, controlled, intentional. The brightness rose and fell as though something beneath the reflective layer was adjusting itself, shifting plates or panels in direct response to the solar heat pouring over it. When analysts sharpened the frames, the truth hit like an electric shock. Beneath the light hidden in the reflections, a geometric grid rose into view, perfect hexagons locked together in metallic order. No randomness, no fractures, no scars of cosmic erosion, just a flawless mechanical symmetry that had no business floating freely in interstellar space. Astronomers expected confusion. What they didn't expect came next. A single ultraviolet flash pulsed from 3I Atlas. Then another and another, each one separated by exactly 247 seconds. Not drifting, not wavering, not bending to the object's rotation or distance. Perfect timing, perfect repetition, perfect defiance of anything nature produces on its own. This wasn't a comet. Nothing about it acted like a comet. Nothing about it obeyed the rules of chemistry, physics, or thermodynamics. If something returned from behind the sun, brighter, sharper, more ordered, and more communicative than ever before, there was one question no one could escape. Why did it come back? Long before its reemergence stunned the world. 3I Atlas had already carved its name into the short, unsettling history of interstellar objects. Humanity has only seen two such travelers before it. The first in 2017 was Oumuamua, a silently spinning cigar-shaped fragment that sparked years of debate and left behind more questions than answers. The second was Borisov in 2019, a more conventional ice comet that flared brilliantly and slipped away without ceremony. 3I Atlas became the third visitor from another star system, and somehow from the very beginning it felt different. Every major observatory tracked it. Hubble traced its approach. Keck in Hawaii followed its motion. Ground-based telescopes across Europe recorded its brightness night after night. The global coordination wasn't normal. Scientists do not give this level of attention to a comet unless something deeply wrong is hiding in its data. With Atlas, the unease began immediately. Its orbit didn't behave the way interstellar objects usually do. Its brightness rose too quickly some nights and plunged too far on others. Even after calculations were cross-checked between observatories, the measurements refused to settle into anything familiar. The object drifted through the solar system like something responding to forces no textbook accounted for. The more they studied it, the less sense it made. Its light curve dipped in places where models predicted stability. It brightened smoothly at times when comets normally flare violently. It moved through space not with the graceful arc of a natural traveler, but with the crisp, almost angular drift of something making tiny decisions as it went. But the strangest part wasn't what astronomers saw, it was what they felt. For reasons they couldn't explain, the data carried a kind of tension, a subtle rhythm that made even experienced observers uneasy. It wasn't behaving unpredictably, it was behaving purposefully. And then just as those strange patterns began to converge into something that might have revealed its true nature, the object slipped behind the sun. The disappearance was expected. The silence was not. Days passed, then weeks, then longer still. No telescope, Webb, Hubble, Keck, or any ground array caught even a trace of signal from its location. Nothing scattered, nothing faint, nothing reflected. Not a single glimmer of radiation. It was as if 3I Atlas had stepped into a doorway and shut it behind itself. Behind the sun is the one place in the solar system where anything can happen without being seen. Structure could shift. Surface layers could rearrange. Vents, jets, or mechanisms could activate unseen. If something wanted privacy, if something wanted time to remake itself, it would hide exactly where 3I Atlas had gone. And in that silence, the world waited, hearing nothing, seeing nothing, expecting nothing. Until the day the sun moved and 3I Atlas came back not as it was, but as it had chosen to become. The first numbers hit the astronomy teams like a physical blow. A brightness spike of over 400%. A thermal reading that stayed perfectly stable no matter its distance from the sun. A reflective pattern that behaved like adjustable panels repositioning themselves with each rotation. The surface wasn't reacting, it was regulating. Sections of the object flashed in sequence like plates tilting, shifting, bracing against heat, dimming themselves, brightening themselves, responding to incoming light with the unmistakable rhythm of machinery built to survive. Observatories compared results. Nothing matched anything natural. Dust doesn't move like that. Ice doesn't behave like that. Comets don't hold temperature like that. Nothing randomly formed in deep space acts in perfect fluid coordination. Yet 3i Atlas did. And then came the structural glimpses moments, where the reflective glow flickered just enough to expose the rigid framework beneath it. Segmented, connected, alive with motion, pieces shifting as though sharing a common command. Even veteran researchers admitted the same chilling thought. It looked like a machine. If you're watching this and you want to see the truth about these anomalies before the next phase unfolds, make sure you're subscribed right now, because what comes next is where the mystery becomes dangerous. When telescopes zoomed deeper, the light scattering off the object didn't behave like it was bouncing off a solid core. The rhythm of its brightness hinted at empty space inside chambers, cavities, hollows. For something this size, the mass readings were too low, far too low, aligning perfectly with the signature of a near-hollow shell rather than a solid cometary nucleus. 3i Atlas wasn't filled, it was built. And that was only the beginning. The closer researchers looked, the more the situation unraveled into something nobody wanted to admit out loud. This is where even the most level-headed scientists began to hesitate, sometimes mid-sentence, as if hearing the implications of their own words for the first time. Several described the tail's behavior as coordinated, others called it periodic. One even said intentional before immediately retracting the statement. But the data didn't care about reputations or caution. The data kept streaming in, and every new frame made the pattern harder to ignore. That is when a new set of images from northern Chile landed unexpectedly long exposure shots, showing a secondary filament branching off the main ion tail, curving sharply, sharper than solar wind could realistically justify, and then reconnecting as if being drawn back in by some internal magnetic structure. That's when the forums exploded again, and analysts online zoomed into the images with the kind of obsessive focus usually reserved for UFO investigations or deep-sea anomalies. They started marking timestamps, aligning the curvature of the tail with solar wind speed charts, real-time telemetry, and rotational data. And something horrifyingly consistent emerged. The reorientation wasn't random. It lined up with the rotation period of the nucleus itself. Every time 3i Atlas completed roughly the same fraction of a turn, the tail pulsed, bent, or flared, as if the jets were firing in rhythm, almost like thrusters on a spacecraft adjusting orientation. Scientists absolutely refuse to phrase it that way, of course. They use terms like coherently timed jet emission or spinning magnetic field reinforcement. But to anyone watching these explanations live, the discomfort in their eyes told a different story. They knew they were running out of safe terminology. They knew the mystery was moving into territory where speculation was unavoidable. Meanwhile, amateur astronomers kept providing the most unfiltered clues, completely unconcerned about what was scientifically acceptable to assume. Large observatories had no choice but to respond to these amateur detections. So within 24 hours, 2 of them released their own internal analyses confirming that the double flash was real. It wasn't an artifact, it wasn't a shutter vibration, and it wasn't solar interference. It was something coming from inside the object. The question was simply, why? What was causing these timed emissions, and why were they getting more frequent? As researchers dug deeper into the thermal readings, they discovered something even stranger. The heating wasn't uniform across the nucleus. Instead, several hot zones seemed to be shifting around the surface, almost following the internal structure. More importantly, the hot zones remained stable for long periods, not dissolving or fading the way comet surface heating usually does when sunlight moves across it. These behaved like something was regulating them, maintaining them, and shifting them purposefully. If they were outgassing vents, they were the most stable vents ever recorded. The more the data accumulated, the clearer the pattern became. This object was not dying in a chaotic explosion like other comets. It was behaving like a system complex, structured and reacting to internal processes that none of our models could explain. Several scientists even admitted that the object might still be in the process of fragmenting, but the fragmentation wasn't disorganized. It was symmetrical. The jets weren't ejecting debris at random. They were firing in opposite directions, balancing torque and reducing rotational strain, almost like some kind of natural stabilization system was kicking in. Then came the moment that nearly crashed the astronomy subreddit, a new set of high-resolution images taken hours apart, showing that one of the major jets had shifted its position. Not gradually, not over days, instantly. A jet that had been firing from the eastern limb appeared on the western limb in the next capture. Comet jets don't teleport. They can migrate over time as ice pockets break open, but they do not flick from one side to the other in a single rotation unless the entire internal structure reorients, which would have shattered the nucleus. People began comparing 3i Atlas to 2i Borisov and Oumuamua, again searching for any precedent, any model, any data point that could anchor what was happening. But even those interstellar visitors obeyed the known rules. That statement alone sent ripples through the community, because when astronomers say did not anticipate, what they usually mean is no known model fits. And if no known model fits, then the explanations drift into uncomfortable possibilities, unknown structures, unknown materials, unknown mechanisms, and unknown origins of these jet patterns. But the most frightening part hasn't even been addressed yet, because in the last 48 hours of observation, something new has begun emerging from the data, something subtle but unmistakable. The jets are synchronizing. Their firing intervals, their intensities, their turning points are beginning to match across multiple observation stations. They are entering a cadence, a rhythm, almost as if the entire object is preparing for something. As the cadence tightened, analysts started to notice something they absolutely weren't prepared for. The synchronized jet intervals were no longer just matching rotation, they were accelerating. Not drastically, not enough for the public to panic, but enough that every observatory tracking the object quietly updated their internal notes. Even more concerning, the acceleration didn't correspond to any drop in mass or any structural shedding. It was coming from within. Something inside 3i Atlas was generating bursts with increasing frequency, like a heartbeat quickening under stress. The final set of images that arrived just hours ago did nothing to calm the situation. The nucleus, once shrouded in thick gas, briefly cleared during a powerful ejection. And in that moment of clarity, something appeared, an outline or a pattern, or maybe just the illusion of structure. But it looked geometric. Not perfect, not sharp, not artificial in the way sci-fi imagery might suggest, but too clean and too angular to be dismissed as random ice fractures. It vanished in the next frame as the coma closed back in, leaving everyone arguing over whether it was real or just a trick of light. But deep down, nobody liked the fact that every explanation felt weaker than the thing they were trying so hard not to say. The ion tail now stretching farther than at any point before bent sharply one more time toward the heliospheric current sheet. Not away from it, not passively shaped by solar wind. It bent into it, almost aligning itself deliberately as if preparing for some kind of interaction. And then, without warning, the jets dimmed. All of them. For the first time in weeks, 3i Atlas went quiet. Not dead, not broken, just silent like a machine powering down after a long cycle. Scientists now wait, checking telemetry every minute, unsure whether the next observation will show a violent outburst or nothing at all. And the truth is, for the first time since this began, nobody has any confident prediction. Because if 3i Atlas has been following a pattern, if the jets have been cycling, aligning, preparing, then the silence might not be the end. It might be the moment before the real event. Whatever happens next, whatever this object is becoming or revealing the next update, could change everything we think we know about interstellar visitors. And when the silence breaks, because it will, we'll finally understand why 3i Atlas behaved like no comet in history.